Hi folks, and we're live with a little bit of complicated introduction here, but try and bear with me. So, in the description below, just beneath, donate, is a link to Katherine's beta test. And it is related to her new course, Personality Advantage System course. And she's going to talk about that soon. And some key aspects of that. All of the classes for that course have already been recorded. So you've even got like the Enneagram introduction.
No, not all of them. They're ongoing at the moment. But...
Okay, they're ongoing at the moment. And they're on Katherine Fauvre's website, which is katherinefauvre.com.
No, they're not on Katherine's website. They'll be sent an email to people who join the class.
Okay, well, you've got to tell me that. No.
Well, all the hangouts, all the promotional and the pro bono things I do are on katherinefauvre.com under videos.
Right, okay.
So I think what you're saying.
So Katherine's going to explain that, maybe for like half an hour to an hour, and then we're going to talk about the tritype nuances. About
yeah,
that.
not even that long. It'll only take a minute
Yeah.
No, for those that want to know, the series has started with my new approach, which is the personality advantage system. And the reason it says personality and not Enneagram is that I'm bringing in everything I've learned. And for those of you who know me, give me a system, any system, and I'm going to find the validity in it and see how it combines with the Enneagram, because I found that the Enneagram is that one system that's a container to hold all others. So far, I haven't found one that works better in that way. I love all systems, though. I've been studying them since I was 20 years old. So love them, love them, love them. But with this new series of classes that has started, the introduction to the Enneagram with my approach to the Enneagram, which is not that the actual material is dramatically different. I just had the good fortune to study with all the teachings and the originators of the Enneagram. And I have 3 certifications and then did my own research studies, 22 of them to date, where I could check and see what was true, what was not true, how the types would revise things and the words they preferred to use to describe themselves rather than words used about them. But what was confluent, what was true throughout is really my focus of attention. And in some cases, there were real important areas that were dropped out of the transmission, not by design, but because the person teaching it didn't have it or didn't understand it, so did not continue with it, or it happened after different teachers started going out on their own and developed their own material. So it'll be including that. It'll be bringing it back together and explaining why the 2 is strong and militant and not as saccharine as the 2 is described. That there's a very strong reason why the 2 and the 6 look alike, and 2, 6, and 9 can look so much alike, because much of the language was given to each other. Like much of the 2 language was put all in 8, and a lot of the 9 language was put into 2. And if you don't understand what's at the core, the fundamental fear for the types, it's easy to be confused, especially when both 6 and 2 say, well, I'm helpful, but what's it coming from? What's the issue underneath it? 2 is coming from a need for attention, a neediness, a hunger that cannot be asked for and not even overtly earned. It has to be done in a way that is unseen. And thus there's more of a manipulative style that we all have, but the 2 has perfected so that we often don't even see how they're letting us know that they need affirmation. Whereas the 6, for example, is just as helpful, but it's more to be subservient to a stronger other that they perceive will help them when they need it. So it's for safety. It's to manage their fear. And the 9 is helpful to manage the kind of the anger of not being seen, of being overlooked. Now, so in each case, I go into the why, not just the behaviors. The minute we're looking at behaviors, we immediately get off course. Good starting point, but we have to immediately look underneath. So that's what I go into. And then I'm following this course with the requested course for Tritype. And the reason I waited is for those that wanted to get the key elements that were universal among all teachers, and how I slightly adjusted the types so that Tritype becomes much, much more meaningful. And the test, as Ben mentioned, it's a pre-test. It's a beta test, meaning please give me feedback, and don't just say, oh, great test. Say, you know, Katherine, I had trouble deciding between the 2 and the 3 for this reason. And maybe there was a good reason you had trouble deciding, or maybe there's something I need to further delineate. So no information is unwanted. Anything you're willing to share, I greatly appreciate. The strength of all the materials that I've created is that I never stop wanting to continue to add and refine and make these tests better and better and better. Why? So that people recognize themselves. So it's easier for 6s, for example, to begin to see themselves. And we are getting quite a few 6s accurately typing as 6s. Still a little wily with the counterphobic 6, but I'm working on that too. All right? I think I covered what we needed to say. Oh, I'm asked, gee, I want to take Tritype, but now that I understand that you have kind of revised the types a little bit and it makes a difference, now what do I do? No problem. They're recorded. You can catch up. We've done 3, and there are 6 more to go. So you can still get the series and catch up. Or even if you find this video later and you go, oh no, and I want to get into Tritype, that will be recorded too. I now will be recording everything that I do. I also am offering these Hangouts. I will continue to work with these wonderful people. I just, yeah, I mean, really, Ben and Jonathan have made so much available to so many people, just delightful to work with. I will keep coming back until you say, no, don't. And it's been over a year now. So here we go.
Yes.
Is this our, yeah, we had to cancel.
Yeah, we had to cancel. Yeah. I think actually I saw on Facebook that we'd been friends for a year just there. So,
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I think
that's nice.
I think the first hangout was December 2016, and they introduced it as Jonathan's Christmas present.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just, it's just a delight knowing you and your guests, and it's been great fun. And for those of you who don't know, we've covered many, many different topics, and not least of which is how I evaluate the different tests. So what we can do in the future, once we've moved out of the beta test, is then to evaluate the results on that test too. But the Enneastyle part of looking at the words and how people answer them, and how I know by type what words are important, the cluster of words, there are a couple that we did, typing people. So those are still very, very key. And then David and I did a video, Types Your Personality Revealed, which you can find on YouTube, that has a lot of these categories in an overview. But even then, some of that material, those recordings were done in 2011. Yeah, 7 years. I've learned dramatically more in 7 years that I haven't really updated in a formal way, except through you guys. You're getting the most current things here. Okay?
All right. Just to clarify one thing, when you sign up for the course, if you're having to catch up, the videos will be sent by email, won't they?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right.
So that you get a link so that you can watch it at your own convenience.
Jonathan recently has taken one of Katherine's courses. So, Jonathan, what did you get out of it?
Well, there was a really creepy bit where Katherine was saying, she was talking about self-press types and how if you were self-pressed first or second, you'd have, and you were in this kind of hangout, you'd have your water and your phone and whatever else. And I was thinking, my water, oh my God, my phone and everything. And it was just scary how you did that. So yeah, but yeah, it's been quite good. We wish with technical difficulties in the second one, but yes, we did. But
it was a perfect storm, actually.
Yes, but we did quite all.
How about a rugged extreme phone and a can of Ironwood? Does that make me self-pressed?
Sure.
Well, it depends on the reason why. What a great question, because it isn't what we do, but why we do it. Like I lead with the intimate, sexual one-to-one instinct, but I always have the plumage. Like if you really learn anything about the one-to-one, it isn't about wanting to be one-to-one. In fact, I kind of like to put that word away, because people that are self-pres like one-to-one, because it makes them feel more secure.
How about the word, I think, Rennie Barron and
someone else.
Rennie Barron and recently deceased Elizabeth Wagley. They used the word relational for that subtype. What do you think of that?
Yes, but that pertains a little bit more to the heart center, but yes. Right. But what I do like and have always used as well as intimate. Like in business, I'll use intimate or one-to-one, but one-to-one can lead you astray if you're a self-pres and you consider your mate your backup and your security. You'll misidentify as the sexual one-to-one. The reason sexual was used is it is the creative force. It is the part of us that is in search of, attracting a mate. And it doesn't have to be a sexually intimate mate. It can be platonic, a best friend. But the desire is to be desirable. Now, many types want to be attractive. So that can be a little confusing. Like the heart types will say, well, I want to be attractive. But would they write it on that questionnaire? Or would they say they want security first? So this is where it can be very helpful to fill out that questionnaire and see what you'd write, knowing that someone else was going to view what you wrote too. And that you don't know how the material's being used. It's deliberately vague. That's all intentional, because what's needed is where your focus is on a habitual level, not from thinking about it and asking your friends, but like what is true for you, and not erasing it and writing something else. And the fear for the sexual is that you're undesirable. And if you're undesirable, you don't have the power of persuasion over the person that is going to be your survival partner in any given situation. So if we've talked about this a lot, but I don't think I've stressed how critical it is to understand that all types like their mate to be sexy and attractive. They even like their friends to be attractive. That's not enough. You have to need the deep connection where you've got kind of material on each other that could hurt the other if you exposed it, but you've shown the safety and confidence in the other that you will be revealing. It's like taking off your overcoat and taking off all the things that protect you. So there's one person that you feel that twinship with. And even if you don't have a partner, a romantic partner, you're still going to seek it with someone everywhere you go.
I can see that, particularly from your point of view, Cal, because I've recently been reading a little bit about the eight in this book and their core fear of vulnerability. And so I can see that when you said that about you've got material on the other person, that was the particularly eightish. Other types might be a bit more like certain people just like volunteer information very quickly. And not necessarily because they're young and naive, but I think maybe in the hope that the other person will volunteer information.
Yes, it's not the volunteering, it's the quid pro quo. It's like when you reveal, okay, I'll reveal more and more and more and more. And then from the 8 perspective, you don't want to do that because you don't want to give someone the power to hurt you. Because the 8 knows that everybody can go from friend to foe. And you have to really, really find someone safe enough to surrender to, which is where the terminology comes from with each instinct.
Jonathan's not a huge fan of Robert McKee, but he did write something interesting about. He said something about California sins, that people in California are more likely to do that thing of volunteering information to the other person.
Culture makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Sure. And each country has a culture, each family has a culture, each religion has a culture, each group of any kind, state, there's a culture. Californians or Northern Californians, Southern Californians. Oh yeah, like the New Age version, like the Berkeley and Asilomar, all the like, okay, let's do the work, and the movement to become self-aware and self-actualized really had a very strong driving force in the 60s. So yes, that would be a very accurate statement that California would be viewed that way. But true depth,
yeah,
another story.
Do you think New York tends to be a bit more open, honest?
New York would also be up there, but it's more protected. There's a lot more armoring. I'd give it a different Enneagram type altogether. So, yeah, everybody's kind of on their own, expecting to take care of their own. Not so much the we. Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating though this is, I think we should get into business.
Okay. So the business is that a lot of people, when they're trying to confirm their tritype, and for those of you who don't know what tritype it is, it's simply the dominant type in each center of attention. When I did my very first study, I kept seeing a pattern where people had the core fears of not just one Enneagram type, but 3. And I tried to make sense of it because enough of the time, let's say roughly 50% of the time, someone had a wing that they were answering like. So let's say we guessed, made an educated guess that someone could be a 7 and they would have the core fear of 7. They would, have a fear of being trapped, limited, missing out. But then they might also, in the process of inquiry, and I developed a process on all these systems that I've studied that I call in-depth inquiry process, where we get around the superego underneath and find out what is motivating that need, and then the fear underneath that, and then the fear underneath that, and the fear underneath that, and just keep going as much as possible until we get to something that repeats over and over again, and we, for that moment, can't go deeper. But what I found is you can have someone so clearly a 7, for example, but they would also, with a lot of frequency, discuss and name the core fears of the 8. And 8 is not even the same center. And we thought, okay, so this is a 7 with the 8 wing. But then they would also very clearly identify fears that a 4 would share. Now, mind you, these would be people that knew nothing about the Enneagram, and they were coming to me to be typed and then to be coached. And I thought, how can they so perfectly know the core fears, and not only that, the process of getting to those core fears of types they do not have? And we can see the line of connection between a 7 and an 8. We could say it's a wing, but there's no line of connection between 7 and 4. So I couldn't find anything on it in 1994, 95, a little earlier actually, because I'd been working with the Enneagram longer, but in that time period, I was beginning my certification process with 3 different schools. And I thought, wow, someone's got to know this pattern and understand it. I just haven't learned it yet. And I thought, well, yeah, I've only known the Enneagram since 1985. There's probably more for me to learn. But no one could offer anything. So I just started recording it, like who chose what. And then I was looking for patterns because I love patterns. I naturally see patterns and I'm going to track them anyhow, so why not record them? And then when I did the study with the instincts and the core fears, it showed up very clearly and consistently. And I could not explain it, so I knew it was something unto itself. And fortunately, around that same time, I attended a morning session from through the IEA that was a workshop on aspects of Eureka, which was Oscar Ichazo's school, and it was on the movements. And while there, the instructor just made an off comment about how she thought she was a 5, yet she could have these intense, visceral, angry feelings that other 5s did not share having. And at about that time, Ichazo had added try-fix, saying that you have not one fixation, but 3, that you have a fixation in each center. So he had just started releasing that information to his students at the time I was confirming this pattern. So I thought, wow, it's the same. And then I had the good fortune to be able to have a backload of questionnaires with my data to see, yep, it's exactly that, what I saw. There was always 1 in each center of intelligence. And if you know the Enneagram at all, you quickly learn that there are 2 heart types that don't have a line of connection to the head center, and 2 head types that don't have a line of connection to the heart center. And that's because we're using the Enneagram of movement. So the symbol that we're all familiar with, that we all use, is really what happens when the law of 3, that's the 369, is overlaps the law of 7, 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. And that's change. And that's when the lines of connection become very important. And it's a whole aspect of the Enneagram. But for those of you that are really interested in going back further, you will find in the 1200s a Franciscan, probably a 5, a very genius man, Ramon Lull, or Loy, L-L-U-L-L, that already had a 9-point Enneagram where everything was connected to everything else. Now, I didn't find that image until I'd already drawn my image with all the lines connecting and looking for the different ways. Now, Tritype, and I will go into this in the class, there are really wonderful patterns, and I probably could teach Tritype for a couple years, once a week, to get to all the material. But what I want to get to today and share that's so helpful to people is what happens when the focus of the types comes together. The key thing to walk away with is that some elements are doubled up or tripled up, so to speak, and others are canceled out. And what do I mean by that? It's like the 1 and 6, for example. They both focus on being responsible for 2 different reasons. The 1 needs to get it right to begin with, to hold their own authority. So they need to be responsible. They need to be good, and they have a fear of being wrong. But the 6 has a fear of getting in trouble with others and being blamed. So it's very easy for a 6 to think they're a 1, for example, because they want to be responsible so they don't get in trouble with anyone, so they're not made wrong and blamed for something. But the location of authority is very different. With the 1, it's like, I know for myself, and I must uphold these standards, where for the 6 is, I enforce the rules, I follow the rules, I want to be okay with others. I don't want to get in trouble for not following the rules. Now, maybe the 6 will privately not follow a rule, but overall, the intent is to be seen as someone that's following those rules. Common mistake in typing, but when you have a Tritype where someone has 1 and 6, what does it do? It amplifies the focus on rules. It makes that Tritype more rule-abiding, rule-bound. Whereas if we have a combination that is focused on kind of seeing all points of view like the 9, or seeing the opposite point of view like the 6, or having self-doubt like the 4, what do you think is going to happen with the 4, 6, 9? That person's going to have more doubt than any other Tritype. They're going to second guess themselves, need other references of information for reassurance, and they're going to be plagued with doubt and think there's something wrong with them. And remember that all these types and Tritypes and instinctual types and instinctual subtypes are biological imperatives. Every group, every community, every tribe, so to speak, needs all of these combinations to have safety and security for us all. But we're going to have a specialty, so to speak. So the Tritype identifies it. And the looking at the triple focus, it's kind of my little nickname for it, helps us recognize what will be amplified and what might be canceled out. Like when we get to my tri-type, I'm the 874. But all people that have any mixture of 478, 874, 748, any combination, we all are creative. It's the creative type in each center. So creativity is following its own muse. It's not rule bound like the 126. We're going to find that the 126 really follows the rules. And the reason for that is when you're creative, you must find a new way of doing something, which will mean that you have to often go against an existing rule to create something that's new. Perhaps it'll bring about a better rule, but the focus of attention is on the new and the changing. So what happens with that combination is they can be seen as uncooperative because they're not abiding by rules like a 126 or a 136. And very often, if I had a boss or a teacher that was the 136 or 126, they would think I was just out of control because I would find a way around everything. And technically, I wouldn't have broken the rules, but the teacher might say, but you knew the intent. And I said, well, maybe, but how could I know for sure? Now, plenty of times it was self-serving. You know, if the rule was to do something by a certain time, I might work with the fact that it didn't say in your seat at a certain time or in the classroom at a certain time. And I would, you know, eventually the teacher would have to clarify that. And then I would do it. But the inclination would be, for me, as my tri-type, to be in flow. And leading with 8, even more so. There really isn't anything there that would have helped me out in that kind of situation. So it points to our blind spot and it points to our innate gift. So yeah, I'm going to think out of the box at all times. And because I understand this, I can see my blind spot and realize why I was always given feedback that I was uncooperative. And it wasn't really true. I was a nonconformist that was cooperating beyond what was comfortable and didn't realize that other people didn't have that need to see things the way I did, that they were happy with being in the classroom at 1 minute after the bell or before the bell or whatever. And I'd say, well, how do you judge it before the bell? You know, I'm just trying to figure it out. So if we begin with the first group, because I'd like to get through all of them, which is why Jonathan wants us on task here. I can always say more in future Hangouts because I'd like the people here to share how it's true for them. So I will just quickly say what they are and then get to each of us that are present. So for those of you who don't know, when I talk about someone's tri-type, and it has to do with the individual, then I begin with the type they lead with. So in my case, 8. Their secondary type, in my case, 7. And then the third, the one that's used the least, which would be 4 in my case. So there is a descending, oscillating order. There's a stacking order, just like I saw with the instincts in 1995. It's the same premise. It's a pattern of 3. It's trialectic. You use 3, patterns of 3, but you're always ranking everything in order of dominance. And of course, that's where your work is, that's where your gifts are, they coexist. So if I say that I'm talking about a tri-type in general, the archetype of the tri-type, meaning all people with any configuration I will begin with the lowest number. It makes it easier for people when learning a pattern to use a pattern. And the pattern that I really suggest you use is doing that, beginning with the lowest number in each center of intelligence and going around. So I would always begin with the 1, 2, 5, because the 1 is the lowest number of the gut, the 2 is the smallest number of the heart, and the 5 is the first number or lowest number of the head center. So we have a 1, 2, 5, which is great in Jonathan, but there are 6 variations on how this can come together. But overall, this archetype is called the mentor because, again, this is complicated, but all 3 types in the tritype had to agree on the word. Let me tell you, that's one of the most difficult things you can do, because each would have a very good point. And I also have subcategories, but it gets a little diluted. I even have them broken out by the instincts. But again, it gets diluted if you don't think about the key issue, which will always be the core issue. So let's look at it. What happens when you have 1, 2, and 5 together? Well, 1 is the educational type. Safety and security is managed by teaching people what they should or shouldn't do, teaching oneself what you should or shouldn't do, so that you are safe and secure in the world. Remember, all of this is to be safe for all types, but how we define our language safety is going to be very different. All types have fear, all types have anger, and all types have kind of a neediness that comes from shame, and an avoidance of shame. And how do we manage shame? By having an image that is more pleasing than maybe what we really feel. And when we talk about the 2, 3, and 4, they have this neediness. It's a very, very sincere need for attention. And if they don't get it, they feel like they're going to die. So remember, whenever anyone frustrates you or irritates you, just remember that it's unconsciously that serious to them. And until they've gone through the process of the inquiry, they don't realize that the reason they're acting and educational and teaching people how they should or shouldn't be is because they do not want to be experiencing their core fear. And in the case of the 1, which is to be wrong, bad, evil, corruptible. And it's not just wrong, oh gee, oops, I made a mistake. It's like fundamentally wrong. If you are wrong, you are in danger. So, and remember that when we were, all Enneagram teachers were first working with the Enneagram, we thought it was based on family systems. This was very much the theme of the 60s and the 70s, and it made good sense, except that what happened when you had 9 kids in a family? Like, one belief was, well, you each differentiate and choose a different type, but really? Well, why did I know people that there would be 4 9s in a family? Did they just not want to differentiate? No, you're born with it. But we didn't know that till all the brain science started coming out. It wasn't confirmed, but many of us did know. Many teachers already figured out pretty quickly, especially if you had identical twins, that the environment was pretty much the same, as close to the same as you could get, but twins that had never met each other had similar traits, but they didn't necessarily have similar defense strategies. very important point, and I can do a whole nother hangout with that.
I think Tom Condon, I think he said he's in a family I think he has some siblings that are identical twins. Is that right, Jonathan? I think he mentioned that in the last hangout we did with him. So he might have noticed that identical twins with different...
he noticed it as well. And then David Daniels did a twin study a few years ago. There's a lot that has come out because, and people ask, is it nature or nurture? It's both. But the lens that you're gonna see is through the lens of your type and your tri-type and even your instinct, but your instinctual stacking. But here's the thing that I can't say often enough, and that is when you have a family system that is supportive of your lens of perception, you have much more flexibility and resilience to your type. That's the nurture element. If you had a family system that was totally like against the values and what you saw and didn't see what you saw, and tri-type explains a lot of this, why you'd see such dramatically different things, then it's not supportive. Or you can have a mixture, like I had an 8 father, so speaking up, speaking the truth, taking charge, taking the lead, really reinforced by my father. Kind of got me in trouble in school when they didn't appreciate it so much, right? But my mother, no, she was that 469 that I mentioned where, no, you have Tao, you're not supposed to be so confident. It means something's wrong if you're that confident. And it wasn't supported with my mother. So you can have both parents for, against, or ambivalent or neutral. You just will adapt accordingly, because that's the wonderful thing about human nature is we do adapt. We do try every which way, or let's say the defense strategy tries to survive and does whatever's needed. So if we look at the 1-2-5, the reason for the mentor is that the one wants to help people by teaching them what's important, that they should know to survive in the world. That's why when ones are critical, they really think that even if they're frustrated, they still think it's for the person's own good. And the 2 wants to help people, shepherd them along and advise them and, reassure them and support them. So there's someone else in the tri-type that wants to make a difference. And then the 3rd type is the 5. Now, we don't think of the 5 as a type that wants to help people per se, but that's not really true. The 5 loves being the wise man or the wise woman in any group, family, business they're in. So you have 3 types, the one from each center that is focused on advising one way or another. And it's why this tri-type naturally wants to mentor according to the standards that they have. So if the one standards are, you should mentor, you should advise them and help them along so they get it right. The 5 may not really always want to be like hands-on helping people, but boy, they like giving their opinion about what they know, because that's how they survive in the world, to be informed and to be considered the one who knows. And that's how they have power. But the 5 that has 2 and 1 will come forward and do things to help. And people say, well, that person can't be a 5. Yeah, they can. With this tri-type, you will just see someone whose overall focus is on helping people. But then the 5 lead with this tri-type will really set very specific boundaries about how they will do that, and don't expect it. And it'll just be through their knowledge, not through taking your hand or giving you necessarily what you want in terms of daily reassurance. But they will give you the important critical information. So the triple focus is on the details as well, because this tri-type is focused on the standards needed, the people skills needed, and the data needed. So together, it's a pretty phenomenal combination. But to the outside world, it can be a little confusing, because sometimes you're really kind of kind and reassuring, and other times you might be to the point and almost lecturing, and other times you might be just disseminating pearls of wisdom in the way of information. So some Enneagram types will say, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to get from that person. And often the 1-2-5 is shy, not as extroverted. And it's very, 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 very rare that I find an extrovert with this tri-type. Very rare. Now, we're going to find these patterns later. So, Jonathan, because we have you, what would you say about this?
Oh, where to begin? Yeah. I actually used to type as 5 and 4 when I took the tests, and it was only later when I started reading the books that I'd say I was really a 1. That resonated much more fundamentally. And when I started reading through the tri-types, obviously the 1-2-5 is the very first one, and I read it and I thought, wow, that's amazing, that's exactly it. Except, of course, because it was the first one, I thought, okay, I'm probably jumping ahead, so I went to 1-5-4 for a few months before I decided 1-5-2 made more sense. I feel like it's as far as mentoring goes, I feel that's just, it's not even that I'm going out of my way to mentor anyone, it's just that I keep falling into that role, especially if like I'm on the internet or something and I'm seeing something I'm usually one of the first people to answer a question or give advice or correct people and get in arguments. And there's, I've had people celebrate when they agree with me because of how rare it is. So on the internet, like if there's an argument over type or something or other things. So yeah, as far as giving information to help the other person, that's true, but I'm not just thinking of the other person, I'm also thinking of how they're affecting other people and how the information they're giving out will, so on, the wider implications, which perhaps sometimes I'm just overthinking it, like, probably won't be that much, but it's still getting annoying.
And it would be amplified by the fact that you lead with the social instinct too.
Yes.
It would become even more of an imperative to you.
Yeah. And I also remember being really young. I can't remember how old it was, but I remember the first few times, vague memories, the first few times I heard people talk about judgmental like it was a bad thing, and me thinking, what? Why is it bad? What's wrong with you? And it was just so bizarre to me. It's still kind of bizarre today, but yeah, I was like, I could appreciate it if they thought that bad judgment was wrong or being arrogant was wrong, but just the idea that being judgmental itself was wrong was so foreign to me. So, yeah, that's all I can think of saying right now.
Another way that I would look at it is that this tri-type is triple appropriate too. And people say, oh, well, wait, how does that happen? Well, the 1 is next to 2. And what they share in common is rigidity. Now, it's another system that explains that, but rigidity can be identified as the kind of a firm, like, it's kind of like an energetic sequence where we're not as open, we're not as easily deterred, but there's a brittleness to it. So the one holds the point of rigidity, but the 2 is between 2 rigid types. 1 and 3 are the most rigid types, and 2 is created out of the tension of the 2 wings of 1 and 3. So the 2 in many ways is much more rigid than the 1 or the 3, and people just don't realize that. And that's a whole nother in-depth, advanced discussion that's very meaningful. So when you have 1 and 2, you already have a stronger rigidity than any place else on the Enneagram when you bring those 2 together. And then the 5 is rigid about their boundaries, about terms of engagement. Like, they see emotional relating as entanglements, and they want to limit them and control them so that they feel like they can prevail, because they want logic, they want systems, because their defense strategy is keyed towards that. So when you get those coming together, there's someone who really is far more appropriate than others would recognize. They even go against themselves. And maybe, Jonathan, you can speak to this. Like, those of you that have seen the collages, and there are always more collages, and the main person I can thank for that is a 1-2-5. And the Enneamaps that you'll see that I use and teach from are because of a 1-2-5. When she saw what I was teaching, and I would draw every class, she thought, no, I have to put my time and energy into creating a tool that Katherine can use to hand out to people, because Katherine's not going to create that tool, but Katherine will like that tool. And she did. We sat there for, I think, at least 12 hours, and I really would guess that it may have been more like 15 to 18, to be honest with you, because 2 gut types, we sat down and she had a little laptop, and we're talking about PowerPoint in its most primitive stages, and trying to get those, you know, the Enneagram symbol and the centers and the colors lined up. And it still took much longer after that to get what you see now that I use and have used for 25 years. That was from a 1-2-5. What made it? Oh yeah, and she cut out those images that that are being shown now. It took a 1 saying, no, this needs to happen. And then with the tri-types, she said, Katherine, you need the tri-type collages. And I said, yeah, I know. I've got a bunch of pictures from the types. It's just a matter of time of getting them on the board, and I just don't have time. She goes, no, you should have that. Again, the should, and the value. And she's self-pres, by the way. So it's even more indicative of this tri-type. She said, how about if I get you started? If I just pull together what you've got, and then you can add whatever study participants send you. And I thought, yeah, if you give me the corners, so to speak, and the chart, I can fill in the material, and I will limit myself to that little box or whatever's called for. So it's because of her. Now she's already got the makings of the tri-types by lead type, but then she ended up too busy. But they will be here one day, and they will be even better because there will be even more data that's come in. So think of this tri-type as educational. Whenever 1 is there, think of an educational factor and getting it right. those two things coming together for type 1. And then with the 5, you're always going to see some sort of in-depth analysis, and not like just what you might be afraid of or overthinking, but tapping into what you learned, where, and how to retrieve it, and how that piece of knowledge is important at any given time, and why we go to 5s. And they do usually know a lot about a lot of things more in depth than the average human being. And then think of the 2s as relational, as people focused. And in this case, with 1, 2, 5, wanting to understand and support details about people. So actually, you have the collage up there, then?
Yeah, I've got all 27 of them.
Great,
So,
great, great.
I forgot I had them
Yeah.
in a separate folder.
That's right. I thought I gave them to you because we were going to do this, I think.
Yeah, a few hangouts ago.
Yeah. So what you can see is even this picture of the child doing this, there is a stubbornness to this tritype. They choose where they think that time and energy should go. And then they will put in a phenomenal amount of time. So I can't go this much in depth with all the tritypes. I can just kind of skate through them. But for those that are here, I think because you can respond to that. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I just wanted to say that little boy. I'd probably do that just for a laugh, just for fun, just to real life. I go, no.
Yeah, I'm being particular, and yet at the same
I'm
time,
very picky.
Yeah, and I put him on the new 1 card and juxtaposed the a little boy with an angel, image of an angel, because the 1 is always dealing with, wait, I have my own preferences and I'm angry I have to do things this way to be considered good. Like, what's wrong with thinking this way? But the 1 is always aware of whatever system they're in, and that good is not the same at home or with one teacher or another teacher or the next door neighbor or the person that they meet elsewhere. So the 1 is frustrated, very frustrated by not having universal standards. And it isn't until the 1 is about 7 or 8 that they begin to recognize that everyone has different standards and you just have to have your own. And that's about the age that the 1s consciously do that. Yeah, but you'll see that there's the more interpersonal, relational aspects of type 2. There are still we've got the thinker of 5 and the discerning eye of 1. And together we can understand someone more than if we just line up 10 1s. We'll say, yeah, but they all have these standards. You have to find out what the defining elements are, and it's the core fear. 1 has the core fear of being wrong, bad, or evil. So how are you going to prevent that terrible feeling that you'll be rejected because you're bad or wrong? You're going to have standards that will keep you safe. So that's why it's critical to have standards. And the 1 holds themselves to those standards, not someone else. It's their own standards. So it's a pattern of attention. So it gives greater specifics on the differences between 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s. And originally I found that a huge difference was what instinct was dominant. And then really it came out that it wasn't just the instinct, it was the stacking of the instincts. So that's why in 1995 I used that. But when nothing explained the other issues, tritype just kept revealing itself. And then I've been teaching it openly, I think since about 2007, actual classes. Prior to that, I just worked with existing clients and people that already had studied with me in other ways, and I would introduce this in study groups. But yeah, I had no one to discuss it with, so this is wonderful. So again, as a template, if you are the 1, 2, 5, that means that you could lead with 2 or 5. But these are the 3 types that you use. And even these 3 types have an order. Just as you chose type 1 as your dominant type. Little point of interest here, many 6s, sometimes 9s, but many 6s will mistype as one of the types in their tri-type because that's who they think they should be, could be, want to be, or have become. And we always want to look at our Enneagram type not as just that's who I am. It's like, no, it's who we're not. It's the defense strategy that this personality uses to be safe in the world. And if you can properly identify it, I'm using one word now, accurately identify it, then you can begin to benefit from the interventions that are so helpful to people once they identify their type, tri-type, and instinctual type and the stacking of each. And that's why I think it's so critical. So as I'm looking at, in the interest of time, I want to just say as a general rule of thumb, whenever there's a 1 in the tri-type, you will see this educational perspective. But mixing it with another combination will shape how the educational perspective works. So if you look at the 1, 2, 6, for example, I call this the supporter. It could also, it's in many ways the most militant tri-type. And by militant, I mean following the rules, procedure. And the reason I can comfortably say militant is if you accurately understand how type 2 was conceived, but not fully disseminated. It's this quality of being militant. The 2 wants to help people, and they can be very kind, but more specifically, the 2 chooses the person they want to align with, and then they take care of that person because their own survival depends on it. And the image, remember when we're in the heart center and 2, 3, and 4 are in the heart center, it's always about having created an image that's more appealing than kind of the ugly, selfish feelings that all human beings have. So if we all just act selfish, no one's really going to want to go out of their way to help us. We kind of learn that, hopefully, along the way. Just like as an 8, I had to learn that I couldn't tell everybody exactly what I thought of them or the situation and win friends and influence people. So you need to, if you're a heart type, create an image that's more appealing. And in the case of the 2, the core fear is of worthlessness. So whenever you see the 2 show up in a tri-type, you're going to get this relational aspect and this people focus. So if we look at the 1, 2, 6, the reason, supporter was the only one they could agree on. And after my last study, I asked for some new names to see if there were maybe words that people could align with that would be even better, but I just didn't get enough of them. So I think it just needs a little more time, and I will ask again. Maybe I will do a questionnaire just on that. What word would you use to describe your own tri-type, and what word would you use to describe the other tri-types, and go from there. And maybe we can even get more. But so far, except like the 478 and 874 having several different names, we like Maverick, we like the fours, like the catalyst for change. They all make sense, but Messenger was the only one that we could agree upon because they were so different. But why? Because we're the three creative types. Of course we're going to think of other names, but some won't. So does anyone else, does anyone have 126?
I actually think my mother's a 612.
And do you know the ways in which to manage her fear? She becomes militant about the way things might need to be, but but still doubting herself.
Well, basically, this man, I don't want to. I'm not sure should be talking about that.
Well, not in a negative way. Look at it at a meta level. So all sixes are trying to manage fear because they are in the fear center. That's how they know what's needs attending. So remember, we all have anger, fear, or shame, and a neediness. A good way to describe this shame is a neediness for affirmation, outside confirmation. So the 6 knows what to track with greater accuracy by narrowing it down with some sort of system, using a system of reference. Because otherwise the 6 is trapped in noticing everything incoming, outgoing. Did someone mean that or that or that? And there's too many possibilities. And the 6 is meant to look at what can go wrong. So they project what can go wrong, but they also see what can go right. But their attention is on what can go wrong because that's their job, so to speak. So if the 6 has a 1 and a 2, then they need to get it right. They can't just say, oh, I noticed what can go wrong, but you take care of it. That 1 comes in and says, no, I need to get it right as well. And how would I say that? In a way, there would be, well, this relational aspect. So you wouldn't want anyone angry with you. Remember, the 6 doesn't want anyone mad at them. They don't want to be in trouble with anybody. But for their own internal balance, they need to be consistent with how they measure and how they do things. So they're often quite dutiful, even if they're not a social type, even if the social instinct is 3rd in their stacking. There is a natural way that you're dutiful. This tri-type is often very helpful too. They can think they're 2s. It's a very easy one for a 6 to mistype as a 2 or 1. Whenever 6 has a 1 or a 2 or an 8 in their tri-type, they very often mistype as the other types because the 6, it thinks fear is normal. And they don't call it fear. They call, oh, I'm looking for certainty. Doesn't everybody look for certainty? Oh, I'm asking questions because shouldn't we all know the answer to that question before we move on? So remember, until we know the water that we swim in, whatever we're doing makes perfect sense. Okay? So they're very much the supportive helper, but it's triple duty. It's when they come together, it amplifies what one should do. And they really feel compelled to adhere to it, or they feel badly if they don't. Would that be a fair way of saying it about your mother? It certainly is with the 1-2-6s, 2-6-1s, and 6-1-2s that I know, in any combination, is they will put aside their own emotional need, or they think they do, for the greater need to be viewed as doing what's called for. But when they understand, in this case, that they're a 6, then they will be kind of surprised at how much control they are succeeding at having. And all 9 types want control, by the way. It's just, how do we go about getting it? So with this, here's another way to look at it. The 1 is kind of the gut types, it's the type that hesitates. And then of the heart types, it's the 2 that hesitates. And of the head types, it's the 6 that hesitates. And what are they hesitating for? Well, in a Hornadian sense, the 1, 2, and 6 are trying to comply. They're trying, in a way, to submit to get the security that comes from that. But the 1 is only pausing to have those few minutes so they can draw upon what is right, what is morally right in any given situation. The 2 is pausing to see, what they can do to be valued and be seen as valuable and essential and needed. And the 6 is hesitating because they don't want to make a mistake. Remember, so you go back to the core fears. The core fear of the 2 is being worthless. The core fear of the 1 is of being wrong. And the core fear of the 6 is being blamed for making a mistake. So you put those 3 together and you're going to get someone pretty militant about the way they should be, or the way their world should be. And from the outside, you may not see all the ways that this type does that, but they're the most devoted counterpart. So of all the possibilities of the 1, 6, or 2, this combination is often the right-hand man or woman next to the lead person, the CEO, or they enforce the needs of the head family member, the one that's in charge. It's a natural place. They're often the true power behind the throne in the way we've described a 2 can be. But this tri-type can be that too, because they don't like being the lead person. That feels too risky. The 1 can do it the best in this tri-type. But really, they prefer being the working in tandem with others. Okay? So they're compliant, but they're also going to really assert when the person they're protecting is, it's their job to protect. Then they will be militant about other people not interfering with the person that they're projecting. It won't be with themselves as much as it'll be with others. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, Ben's wondering if you have any famous examples of the tri-types as we go through them. So the 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 6.
Oh, gosh.
If you don't have them off the top of your head, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry. I always remind me every time. And
I think that would make a great collage. Like, you could have, like, I know it might be a bit much, have like 50 people of each, or like 10 people of that.
I have that.
And then also like the visual similarities as well.
Well, here's the good news. I have it for the tri-type class.
Ah, yes.
So
bonus content.
I have them broken down by their archetype, their tri-type, their instinctual stacking, so that wherever anyone comes in, whatever level of knowledge they have, they will see that information. I don't teach every subject in every class, but since maybe people have taken the archetypes class with me at one point or another, or they know the instincts, so that's meaningful. It's all there by type, and I keep changing it. There just wasn't a room to put their Myers-Briggs type in, and I do not know at the same level.
Yeah.
I have not put the same level of study into it. And you may have noticed that sometimes I will be reticent to say what someone's type or tritype is if I have not done due diligence.
Yeah.
I'm the puritanical 8, meaning that I have the hedonism in me. But of that dichotomy, I don't want misinformation to go out. I would rather say, you know, I can't say with certainty than to say something that throws people off later.
It's a lot of work to have, like, say, like 10 examples that you're pretty sure of each combination. You'd need like a whole team of people doing research, and then like they would have to bring your research to you, then you go through it and go, yeah, I'll sign off on this.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Like I had a client that was really trying to understand the 136 tritype, and excuse me, the 136, what am I saying? And wanted examples, and had asked me about the Blade Runner. You all know the Blade Runner from South Africa that had the double amputee, and then just did extraordinary things and ran against able-bodied and still won. It pretty extraordinary story, but he became even more infamous after he was accused of deliberately trying to kill his girlfriend in a fit of rage. Well, what's interesting, when my client really needed to understand this, at first glance I thought he was a 3, because he's the priest archetype. For those of you who know the archetypes, he has the chiseled features and can kind of look like a 3 at first glance. But I had a pretty good idea he was a 6, and most likely a counterphobic 6. So I did a deep dive, to the extent that not only did I learn everything I could about him, I watched the entire trial. And I even have an opinion about the trial, that there is a strong possibility that he did accidentally shoot through a door and kill his girlfriend. There's counterphobic 6s, when they're in fear and paranoia, shoot from the hip, literally speaking, and it would make abundant sense. But he was definitely coming up soon, the taskmaster. I mean, some of his criticisms, his girlfriends, were when they didn't, support him getting the right sleep he needed, the right, the food. He couldn't just party all the time, when he was being paid by endorsements. And he had to perform constantly. That means being at Olympic level all the time, which would put anybody under extreme pressure. Olympians, really amp up for that and really train hard, but then they can have a break. Well, if you're constantly competing all over the world to show, to promote a sponsor, you have to be in tip-top condition. So he was adamant about those things in such a way that people might think that he was self-pres, but I don't think so. I think he was the sexual self-pres. And putting that all into consideration with the 136, I'll skip ahead and then go back again. The 136 is this taskmaster. They can't, there we go. Yeah, well, look at that face. Thank you for choosing that one. For those who have learned micro expressions from me, just look at his eyebrows, and you can even see the doubt or just that little sheepishness. And here he is, actually, I think, in an event.
Well, actually, I chose this image for her as well.
yeah, she was a beauty. And now there were stories about him, like the worst stories they could come up with were when he was really, you know, probably upset or just wanted to, but it was driving fast. But if anybody knows a counterphobic 6, if they are stressed, they amp up whatever they're doing. So if they're driving, then they're going to drive fast. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. Is it also male posturing? Absolutely. Okay, he did it with 2 girlfriends, drove way too fast. All right, but does that mean he never killed anyone before or threatened to kill them? It just doesn't make sense that would be a determining factor. Anyhow, it got very complicated, and it was political and socially driven, and perhaps his attorneys made the wrong case. But either way, you're looking right now at a classic example of a 6 face. The furrow over the one brow, and if you showed a bunch of pictures of him, you will see many different faces, like when we looked at Putin. Remember how we could just see Putin and all these different expressions? Well, go ahead and
I'll try to show it. It's not quite behaving itself. I initially tried to show the Google image thing where it showed a lot of them. What I think I'll do is I'll take a screen grab of a lot of them, and then I'll be able to show that. It'll just take me a minute or 2 to do it.
Okay, great. And we'll come back to it. But it's a wonderful way to see it, whereas I believe that she was a 7. And when you really go deeply into the trial and what they were saying, I mean, we know way too much. We know their texts, you know, how they conversed on text. They have no privacy whatsoever when something like this happens. And also the people that were trying the case, they had their own types as well. So back to the 1-2s, the last but not least is the 1-2-7. And the 1-2-7 changes because all of a sudden we have the 7 that's bright and uplifting. So when 2 and 7 come together, a complete change in focus. And you can combine it anyway, like 2-7 and something else, there'll still be this upbeat quality. 1-6 and something else, there'll still be this need for responsibility. But in the case of the 1-2-7, you've got someone that is triple focused on they're the teacher, they're correcting, but they need positivity. It's actually a word now, positivity. And they need to be helping people have fun learning. And that's why this was a pretty easy one for all 3 of them to agree on, because they all like to teach and to make it enjoyable and pleasurable. Another thing I might say about the 1-2-7 is, again, think in your template now, educational from the 1, and getting it right, relational from the 2, so that's interpersonal, and then here's a new factor, the 1-7 line. Now, this is really important in the advanced work because the 1 has a line to 7, and the 7 has the matching line to 1. That really reinforces the 1-7. So the 2 just comes in and supports that. The 2 has a wing of 1 2 and 7 are lookalikes because they're both the upbeat types on the Enneagram. The 2 up types are 2 and 7. So there's no way this tri-type wouldn't be upbeat. And there are more school teachers or teachers in different fields that are this tri-type than any other, bar none. It's pretty extraordinary. And then the most common secondary factor is the social instinct, like wanting to make a difference. So yeah, we could just probably think of any famous teacher and get there. Whereas the 1, 3, 5, now 1 and 3 are coming together. What did I say earlier about 1 and 3? These are the 2 most rigid, perfectionistic types. And 5 has their own rigidity, as I mentioned earlier, about their boundaries and controlling their time and space, and energy that they will spend on emotional entanglements, as they call them. They need a lot of their own time. So with the 1, 3, 5, you get someone that is more focused on procedures and how to do something, like a lot of robotic wizards are people that lead with 5 very often, but could be any combination, but they usually have that precision that comes with 1 and 3. And 1, 3, and 5 are by far the most precise. And I could say a whole lot about this, but it explains why they're the technical expert. Okay, there he is again. Now, some people will say, oh, isn't he showing contempt? Because the way his mouth is slightly uplifted, we're diverting here to our 1, 3, 6. But what you don't know is he had an accident where he was driving a motorboat and, was inebriated according to the reports, and was really injured, and his whole face was injured. So whenever you have scar tissue, that's going to change things. What I went by was him speaking and whether he was showing the other elements of contempt. So everything, yeah, okay, that's a great pensive look that the 6 has. Now anyone could look up, but yeah, great, Ben. Any more before we go back to the others? Okay, so with the 1, 3, 5, we get a much more impersonal combination, because there isn't a 2, there isn't. 3s want to perform and be efficient. Yeah, you can see how people might think he's a 3. If you go by the Tom Cruise, you can see his sadness on the right. I don't know where that was taken from, but he's very sad. He's obviously very happy on the left. Very sad there. That's probably when he's going to trial. It's probably when he looks so sad. Who wouldn't be? And to make a long story short, with this individual, with those who are saying, oh, wait a minute now, yeah, but why, Katherine, do you really think there is that possibility, the reasonable doubt? And it's because it was also revealed that after he killed his girlfriend, whether it was intentional or otherwise, he couldn't stop sobbing for hours. And usually, if there was a part of you that's really angry, the contempt would break through when you were being interviewed. You wouldn't feel such despair. You maybe could love the person very much and make the mistake of doing that. But premeditated was just not usually, if you're going to factor in probabilities and possibilities. With premeditation, they have to work hard to maintain that level of emotional distress. And he couldn't control himself, his grief. So that's a different piece too. So they're all facts, and then because I wasn't there and I don't know what happened, I will never really know. But I have reasonable doubt, is what I'm saying. Okay, the 3 also brings the desire for, in this case, success. And so when you have success, with the 5s need to get all the details and the 1s need to get it right, then you're going to get someone who may be better at functional things than they are at interpersonal things. Now, if there were an ENFP 135, of course that would modify this. But having said that, they still like to be doing something technical. It just works well. A lot of the surgeons that do the arthroscopic surgery, which is really like using a computer, you're operating with a computer. It's a natural fit. A lot of surgeons have this tritype, and it would make sense why they go into this area of medicine, where when we get to the 269, you can, or the 279, you can see why they'd rather be the internist or the family doctor, because there'd be more interpersonal relating. Okay, so the 136, we've been talking about a lot, which is that taskmaster, the triple doing, double responsible. So when you read more about the Blade Runner, that's his nickname, but you'll find him. You can just Google him.
Yeah,
Oscar Pistorius.
Yes, Pistorius. Thank you. There's a sense of industry. Now, the 136 is not known for being really creative and innovative. They are known, like the 135, for their ability to just be precise and to accomplish and achieve and do and excel, not through original thinking, but by mastering something at a level that they're unconsciously competent, whatever they choose that to be. So they can look like 3s, regardless of which type is in the lead. Because they want success, they want to achieve, they want to do well. The 1 wants to do well. So it shapes it differently here. And you get kind of triple industry is a term I often use. They're industrious. In fact, I had the word industrious, and then they wanted me to change it to taskmaster.
One slight interruption there, Kath. It's just that you know this you talked about there, the unconscious competence. So that 4 3s, they're really going to be lined up with NLP's message then. So you can really imagine the 3s going on those NLP courses, and when they hear about unconscious competence, that's really going to jive with them.
Well, we all are unconsciously competent at something.
Such as typing. I mean, in terms of like on a keyboard, once you get used to it, it's like, I didn't really consciously put my fingers there, and yet I did it.
And I've never become unconsciously competent at the keyboard. But I'm unconsciously competent with the Enneagram now. I just know so many parts that all I have to do is go and retrieve it. So if you see me look to the left, I'm going, oh, and I'm seeing the actual chart I put it on, and the person I interviewed who said something in particular. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how each type goes about it. But the point I really want to stress, and maybe this ties into what you're saying, is this particular tritype is not original. Their strength is that they come from really mastering something. Like when I have taught other Enneagram teachers that use the Enneagram in business, and they're this tri-type, they have the same way of teaching every time. And I would go on to say, especially if they're the E, S, T, or F, but J, then it's the same joke at the same place in the training. So each training is like, could be a study unto itself. It's so identical. You could check out a lot of things in terms of the variables of the attendees because they're so consistent. Whereas many people come to whatever I'm teaching because I'm never going to say the same thing twice. And if I do, I'm also going to say something I haven't said before. And that's just very different than the way we're opposites. We're polar opposites. And yet I make certain that I have someone that has 1 or 6 that I'm working with, and ideally the 3 or the 4 in there, so that, or even the 1, 2, 6, so that my overly creative ENXP, ENFP, if you want to call it that, idea of things actually is completed.
Very wise. Yeah.
Yes.
I was actually going to ask, is this common for politicians, this tri-type?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And so where there are examples, I can give examples of that, like Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton. Many of them have this tri-type. And then add social instinct. But their Myers-Briggs can be different.
What about Nixon? Was he this? Nixon?
He was definitely the 6, and he was definitely the 3, and I think it was maybe 9.
All right.
I would have to.
Yeah, just a thought came to my head.
I think sometimes though with politicians, it's like if you have politicians that are consistent. I think Tony Benn once made a distinction between. He said that Tony Blair was like a weather vane. That it would change depending on the political winds. And I actually think that Tony Blair was probably ESFP and very agile politically, and a lot of like performer kind of skills, ESFP skills, like Bill Clinton. But someone who was like steadfast in their political opinions, I would say as 1. But to me, someone like Hillary Clinton, it's like people who are like politically expedient and change their views.
Okay. We don't want to go there. We don't want a libertarian talking about Hillary Clinton. We're going to move on now to 136, I think. 137, I think.
So the main thing to get is with the 1, 2s, is you get people that are going to use their kind of strength to help people. And then when you get 1, 3s, you get a perfectionistic perspective. And the 137 is the most perfectionistic tri-type that there is. And people say, whoa, how is that? Well, the thing I'm trying to stress is that there's the line between 1 and 3. Excuse me, the 1 and 7. So that's amplified. And then the 3 and 1, both are perfectionistic. The 1 has to have the perfect values. The 3 has to have the perfect persona. So that's amplified. And there's nothing giving them relief. The 7 is a kind of a playful, fluid type. But if they have 3, then they've got to be the best or try to be. And if they have 1, they have to do it well. So you get someone that wants the big picture, the little picture, and to move forward.
From a functions point of view, I can see how this can be in terms of their perfectionism, because if we think of like NE as like the transcontextual thinking and wanting everything to be consistent and finding connections between things. And it says there, the systems builder, you want a system that is perfectly consistent and and where the generalizations work. And they're perfect.
And they are leading to some high ideal, because 1 and 7 are the idealistic types on the Enneagram, and 3 and 7 are the two most positive types on the Enneagram. So if you start factoring in what is coming together, you can see what gets canceled out and what gets amplified.
Oh, she's frozen.
Now, whoa.
You just froze a little bit there, Katherine.
Oh, the 1 is going to point out that we need the structure with this tri-type, because the 3 and 7 would want to just be go, go, go. But the 1 says, whoa, hold down just a little bit and get it right. And that's why they're so good at seeing what can be built. And I'm not talking about it in terms of engineering. I'm talking in terms of taking the parts and the whole and seeing them move and be interrelated. So they can be technical, so they could be an engineer, but they would want to have a specialty that had them doing things that were innovative and new, but...
Oh, yeah. Right then, so we can go to whilst Katherine comes back. So, Carol, you are a professional type person, so you could maybe take over for a little bit. What do you think about what you've heard?
Oh, nothing like throwing me in the 12-foot end, Ben. Good thing I'm a 479, isn't it?
2-7.
Excuse me, Jonathan, I was so trying so hard to get that right. I come from the type and temperament background, so I am just find myself like I'm drinking from a hydrant when I listen to Katherine, and I love it, and it makes so much sense. So I am just like where I was 25 years ago at type, just drinking from the hydrant and loving it. I can't wait till I get to the point. I'm going to start taking her classes. I can't wait till I get to the point that I'll never be as expert as this as she's been doing it for 25 years already, but I can't wait till I get to the point that I can put this in type together. It's fascinating. And to think that Michelle Obama and Hillary are the same type, because I don't know if you ever saw film footage that showed the look on Michelle Obama's face when Hillary Clinton spoke. Oh my God, she just liked that woman.
Yeah, they are not. They are not.
No, that's another.
But anyway, so that's. But anyway, people know about Hillary Clinton not exactly being consistent.
Anyway, Katherine would say that this is a film producing type, or a type that's often involved in the film industry and in productions and things like that. They're very good at.
Yeah, we'll probably have a separate hangout in future on Hillary Clinton, and then YouTube will probably contact me and say, "Oh, you've got to take it down."
Oh, so Jonathan, you're saying 136 is often involved in like the intricacies and the detailed competence of, did you say film production, that kind of thing?
No, 137.
137. Okay.
137. Katherine says you find in Hollywood a lot. She says Tom Cruise is a good example of a 371, for instance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so. You get to see how the 7 in particular will be bringing that sort of fun energy to someone that wants to be involved in that sort of world, an entertainment business, and obviously the 3 wants success and the 1 wants the structure and the organisation, so they would do well together. Yeah, I'm just trying to make up for Katherine not being here.
Yeah, also,
what I find fascinating about it is you can, like, there's some Enneagram types that when you put it together with the Myers-Briggs psychological type, it just amplifies it. And I'm thinking that when I get there, what I'm going to find out is that certain Enneagram, and she's got a table like that I did a screen print. Thanks, Ben. I'm going to study that. I'm thinking when you look at some people of a certain type, oh my God, they're the
Yeah,
in the
it does.
universal,
Yeah.
they're the universal image of that. I'm
Yeah.
thinking there's going to be a correlation between that type and certain Enneagram. And when you get that type with the different Enneagram combination, yeah, you're going to see that type
Yeah,
there, but it's
it's-
going to be a little different. Does that make sense to you, Jonathan and Ben?
Yeah, it's like, so for instance, if you have an INTP who is also an Enneagram Type 5, and usually, like most INTPs, it's like 70%, from what I've seen, it's like 70% of INTPs, when they take an Enneagram test, they get 5. And like, so it's like when they do match up like that, it is like amplified. Now, NS can be a bit, NS are interesting because they can sort of go Enneagram 9, Enneagram 1, Enneagram 2, Enneagram 4. So, or the main, and then 6. So it's like learning Enneagram will help you see like. But we once had the idea of like having an INFJ hangout with lots of different Enneagram types. But I think Jonathan said you couldn't really have an Enneagram Type 7 INFJ.
It would be a hard thing to
I
find.
wanted to ask a question. Since you're considering INFJ hangout, I can just chip in for a minute. I noticed that in a popular version, Enneagram Type 7 is often considered like something like hedonic. But in fact, the person who said hurry to do kind things, like hurry to be kind, might also be 7 because they have that sense of urgency and that something's not covered. Like having 2 and 7 fixes, or 1 to 7 or something like that.
Yeah, some 7s can be very. All 7s are really hedonistic in a way, but some 7s can be much kinder involved, especially if. Very often it's because they like to help in particulars. Like I listened to someone who I think is a 7 talk about a certain comic that they like, and they really liked in particular the fact that the characters helped people because they wanted to, not out of some sense of duty or obligation. It was something that they personally enjoyed. So, and other 7s might feel a bit more obligated, but they do like to inspire people and to bring out the fun side of things, and they are positive types, so they'll bring that up.
Would that be like if they're particularly like a social instinct, with very bad instinct, Jonathan? That
It can, yeah. I mean, usually the self-praise 7 you'll find is the most materialistic and selfish on the surface, although they can be quite committed and generous with their friends. The social instinct 7 is more counter-gottenness, like they're trying to be. They're conflicted. They're conflicted because they want to help others, but they also feel they want to have fun and enjoy themselves, but they also feel a sense of social obligation. So there can be a tension there, and the sexual sort of in between. So, yeah. I've got this kind of fear that Katherine doesn't know that she's went off and she's still just NEing.
Well, I sent her a message on. I sent her an email. I sent her the invite again. So hopefully, back.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say about the systems builder that, like the 7, it's like with Victor, and a lot of INTPs will do this. They want their theory to like be all encompassing. I don't know if you've noticed that, Carol, with Linda and with David Kersey. Like, it's like they try to fit a lot of stuff to their system.
Well,
I see that as for NT all completely, but INTP may be like the epitome of that in the NT world.
This isn't really that kind of systems build. It's more like systems of friends and relationships and maybe business systems and so on. It's like you're building up networks. I think that's what it's going for, because Victor's definitely not a 7 in his head. He's definitely a 5-ish. He's definitely a 5.
Yeah, he's very high.
Another thing.
Maria would know more. Do you think Victor is 5 wing 6? Maria?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Maria. I think me and Maria talked about this, and definitely, but she wasn't sure of his gut type. I think definitely he's got 5 and 3 in there. He could be a 5-3-1 even, but I'm not sure.
He frequently says that his business logic is not that good.
Or 513 perhaps. But I'm certain to get 3 in there. It doesn't necessarily need to be good at business, especially if 3 is last. It'll be more about just working hard and not being very emotional and taking emotions out of the equation, that sort of thing.
I mean, I would suspect that a lot of the
539 is possible.
A lot of the INTP profile that he wrote is based on himself.
Yeah. 539 is possible, but I think he's got 5 and 3 in there. I don't think he's going to get.
Right. So, Cal, yes, if you look at, like, say, usually EPs are like 7s, Enneagram type 7. So, like, if you have, like, the ENFP who's a 7.
Well, I would say more that 7s are usually EPs rather than the reverse.
Okay. But so there are these correlations.
I would say that the ENTPs are a toned down version of what the ENFP. Does that make sense, Jonathan? That the ENFP is a kind of brighter, more out there 7 than ENTP is.
Well, yes and no. It depends.
It's
Somewhat depends on 7. I mean, you might be thinking of John Beebe, who's more of I'd say is the logical subtype of ENTP, whereas there's the intuitive subtype, which is more ENFP-ish and more fun and out there. But it's only when you really start talking to them that you realise that there's certain areas where they're quite cold and very logical and so on.
I think. Katherine's back! Yay!
Oh, so I'm so glad it didn't knock you all off, and that it was set up by you guys, because I don't even know what to say. It showed I had the bars. It shows I should have it. I checked with my neighbor because I couldn't get back on. I'm plugged in directly to I don't know, but I took another picture, so. I want to alleviate this because in California it should not be busy at this time.
You are beyond technical reproach.
Well, sometimes you start to think you're crazy, and then it wouldn't let me. Anyhow, you don't need it.
Yeah, we just have to get used to this sort of thing. We'd just be grateful to Google for giving us their free service.
Yes, but it happened to me in the class I was teaching last week, so it's very frustrating when I have them come out and.
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe because we've got so many people in here, although everyone's happy to stay, of course. Just
3, 4, 5, 6. No, because it automatically has like a limit of 10, and I think we're up about 9, and 2 of them are me.
2 of them are you. Okay. Is that to handle your dual personality?
Yeah, it's so that I can see what's on the other screen when I'm sharing screen.
I'm teasing you, of course.
Yeah.
I have a second screen too, but I find it's easier to have just one.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking when I was having to wait while it was resetting the modem is that I'd like to jump to the types of each person in this hangout in case they can't be in a future hangout, where we go through the rest. Is that amenable? And then we can come back the next time we meet and carry on.
Yeah, we've got Rachel here.
No, actually, we have Thurin here, he types as 514, which is the next one, so we may as well just...
Well, but Rachel thinks she's a 3. So is that next one?
Let's see. We were kicked off with the system builder.
It's hard to tell when you said like who's going to be more likely to appear, because like Thoraine's in Sydney, so it's like Saturday morning for him, so he's probably more likely to appear again in future. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. It depends on who wants to go out of the 2 of you.
And I let my client know to give us a little more time. So I've got just under an hour left.
Oh, excellent.
No,
so
it's like Thoraine's made the choice.
Well, what I can do is say what the focus is for each tri-type, and then come back and focus on how and why with the people in the group. How does that sound?
Okay.
Okay, so I will try to sail through these and remember as best I can. Oh, I do have a handout I can look at to make sure I can give you the key features. Okay, so I'll come back to the 145, but I'll first just give the, I'll begin with the 125 again very quickly. So 125, the mentor, triple details, surprisingly appropriate, educational, getting it right, in-depth analysis, and details about people. The 126, the supporter, they have triple duty, compliant, they tend to be compliant, but are also very assertive in support of the person they are supporting. So we've got someone that's educational, needs to get it right. They're also relational because of the 2, and they have this allegiance and duty and loyalty of the 6, and the need to avoid blame of the 6. The 127 is the teacher, triple focused on people. Everything having to do with people one way or another, correcting, bringing joy. It amplifies the 1's line to 7, so you get someone that's educational, that wants to get it right, that's relational, but they're really good at squeezing the boredom out of learning, and that's due to that 1-7 line. And the other things that I mentioned, the 135, the technical expert, they're more impersonal. They're triple precise or exacting, and do not have a lot of elements that make them more interpersonal. So they're educational, they need to get it right, as we've mentioned with the 1, brings in the precision of 3 and the depth analysis of the 5. The 136 is the taskmaster, kind of that efficiency person. It's triple doing, they must be doing something. I didn't say that like they have to be knitting, or while they're watching TV, they have to do other things. It's very noteworthy that they must be busy. They also, that 1 and 6 coming together makes them responsible. So they're the most industrious type. They are, so it's educational of 1, the precision of 3, and the success of 3 with that duty of 6. The 137 is the systems builder, kind of a funny name if you don't understand that they're triple perfectionistic. It amplifies the line to 1 and 7 as well. But however, it brings that educational getting it right with the successful image with enjoyment and with the vision. The 145 is the researcher. This person is triple analytical. Good match for someone that would naturally want to research. They're very particular. They know a great deal, but can struggle with coming across as a know-it-all. Because when you know that much, other people usually don't. And if you can always correct them with the accurate information, just like the 125, they're going to hear about it. The 5 comes on a little stronger, so the educational getting it right with the emotional intuition. Okay, now we've introduced a new way of knowing. In terms of the 145. Now we're going to see 4 in all the tritypes. And then with that in-depth analysis, so it amplifies the 1-4 line. And of course, 5 has a natural wing of 4. 4 has a natural wing of 5. 1 and 5 are lookalikes. So you can see why this particular tritype would be best suited and do research studies quite well. The 146, the philosopher. Now, a lot of the types want to be philosophers. And remember, we have to correct for the fact that people that would even be interested in this system are usually coming, there's a lot more NF than anything else. And even if there's the T, there are factors that make the T and the F kind of more less distinguishable, I should say, because all of psychology, all the research studies I've done seem to draw in the same tri-type, the same Myers-Briggs types, and the most common participant. So I dutifully go out, and I'm not a duty person, but I am someone who wants the most accurate information. So I have to go find people that are ISTJs that do not want to participate in a study. I have to go find the 5s that will do it because they know me and they want the results, but they don't really want to participate. I have to find people that aren't NFs, so that there isn't this huge imbalance of a perception of what a type is like based on those factors. And even though I had over 1,000 people in that last study, when you're breaking it out by what functions are going to choose, are going to naturally be in what type or tri-type, oh, we need 40,000, 50,000 to really say something fully meaningful. But actually, there was a lot of meaning, and maybe that's one of the classes that we could do, is some of the pieces of that study, because those of you that participated, I had, I think, like 83 or 85 questions. It took a really loyal person to participate in that. And they're still coming in, actually, people that find it after the fact. All right, so back to shifting to having 4 now in the tri-types. What happens when 1 and 4 come together? It always amplifies the 1-4 line. So you get someone with the 1-4-5 as a researcher, as I said, with the 1-4-6, you've got this philosopher, but this person is triple critical. It is the most critical judging tri-type that there is. But that judgment goes towards themselves first. They're going to have enough doubt because of the 4 and 6, but they're going to need to get it right. The 1 is still there, but they have the emotional intuition. But 4s have self-doubt, so it's going to bring doubt. The 6 brings that duty, allegiance, doing things that are free of blame. So then you can see why they're doubting and why they're asking questions and why they're criticizing. They're trying to be safe and have you be safe by considering all those factors. And even when 4 is in there, it's a pretty tough one because the intuition is giving them all kinds of information. But the 1 and 6 say, yeah, you can't believe that. Check it out. Or that shouldn't be that way. You can sense it. You can feel it. You know what the external rules are with that intuition. And it's a really intriguing tri-type. Really intriguing. I could say a lot about this, but just understand that it's triple critical of self and others. So you get someone that's going to appear very judgmental. The 1-4-7 you might be familiar with because prior to people understanding that the original triads were only 9 of the 27 that there are, and it wasn't understood until this research and Chazo simultaneously putting out that we have all 3, that the others became apparent, but mathematical people can actually map out this progression. And I will show that one of these times. A great little mathematician showed me how to see this, that they had to have always been there. Because if you're working with a law of 3, it's there. But back to these guys. When you have the 1-4-7, you get the visionary. And It's triple vision, ideas, what needs to happen to execute a vision. So the 7 has the vision, the 1's willing to do the hard work to have an ideal kind of utopia in a physical sense. And the 4 has the emotional ideal of what that would be, what meaning could be achieved. Now, one thing I didn't say that's really important to understand about these tritypes is when they are a primary tritype, like the 147, the 369, or the 258, it is amplified because there isn't another type coming in and altering that view. So if someone discovers the Enneagram and they find out they're a 1, they will relate very much to the idealism that we've always taught with the 147, long before tritype. So if they're also that tritype, they say, tritype doesn't really make a difference, because it didn't for them. 369s might say the same thing. Well, yeah, no, I relate to 9. I relate to 6. You know, a 3 will say that if they're a 369. But as David Daniels demonstrated, and he's on the tritype video, here he is, an Enneagram teacher, and he didn't know how to explain his oneness as a 6, in other words. He didn't know how to explain the 1 or the 2. He should have only been able to relate to the 3 and the 9. But if he had to choose what was more dominant, the natural line of connection that the 6 has to 9 or 1, he would say 1, and did actually on the video. And the same being, he'd have to say it was 2 over 3. And if you knew him as well as I had the good fortune of knowing him, it's very clearly that tritype. So back to that 126 tritype, I could have said David Daniels. So let's see. So on the 258, what you get is a strategist. This is the person. Now there are a lot of tritypes that are strategic, but the 258 is triple rejection because they're also a primary triad, and each one is hypersensitive to rejection and doing something to not feel or be rejected or care, in the case of 8, about being rejected. Is that true? Of course not. But does the 8 believe it because they said who cares at such a young age? Yeah, 8s have to go back and remember, oh yeah, I care very much. So the 258 tritype is kind of managing the relational, the in-depth analysis, and that kind of take charge of their own, so to speak, protector, because it amplifies the 258 line, just as the 147 amplified that 147 primary triad. Okay, 259, the most inhibited tritype. The only one close is the 469. It's interesting. You're going to also find in the more advanced work that it isn't always what you might think in terms of what other tritype might be more inclined to be withdrawn. So I have some types that I just say, the critical types, the rainbow types, the positive types, the creative types, tritypes, because there are certainly more than one. But of the full 27, I will tell you where they have the greatest expertise and therefore the greatest dilemma. And with the primary triads, 142, 857, and 369, they are certainly very skilled in their tritype focus, but their blind spot is greater because they don't have as many tritypes to work with. And what do I mean by that? That's a whole nother hangout where we can look at how many tritypes you use frequently. This is just the lead tritype for all of us, by the way. But anything that truly is, that does work, is not static. It's fluid. And to be in the human condition, we specialize in this dominant tritype that we have, but we use several tritypes. And depending on certain factors, some of us have fewer tritypes that we utilize on a regular day in, day out basis, and others have maybe as many as 7 that they're constantly oscillating through. So who do you think has an easier idea of determining their type? Those that have one of the primary triads. Who has more trouble confirming their type or us seeing their type? Those that have access to multiple tritypes. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that volume is working because I can't hear anybody.
Yes,
we're all
that makes
muted.
sense.
Okay.
We're all attentive. We're all listening.
I was being silent and nodding my head, Katherine.
Oh, okay. I'm looking. Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't.
sure, that makes sense.
Okay.
We all have fantastic microphone discipline.
Okay, great, because it can happen to me. So in other words, people aren't stupid. There are reasons that it's more difficult to type some more than others. There are many factors. This is one of those important factors. Okay, so I left off with the strategist, the triple rejection. But if you're trying to not be rejected, you're going to really have strategies to manage that. The 259, I said, was the most withdrawn, but they are the problem solver. Now, why are they withdrawn? Because they're triple. They have 3 types that are either want things positive, like the 2, or they're more removed and withdrawn, like the 5 and 9. So you put those together, it's very rare for them to be extroverts. And by what they meant by problem solver, because a number of types are problem solvers for sure. Any human being can be using their intelligence, but meaning that they'd rather kind of work with a problem and play and tinker. And they often have SJ in terms of Myers-Briggs type. It's in an inordinate amount. So again, which comes first, chicken or the egg? I think possibly both. But they're relational, they have the in-depth analysis, and they go along to get along, but they're shy. One key factor is how shy they are. 268. Now, the 268 is the rescuer because they're triple protective. They are active, and in some ways, I think the hero more accurately describes them, but the identification to differentiate them from the 368 is that they go in and rescue. They're more inclined to be a firefighter as opposed to a police officer. A police officer would be more inclined to be the 368 because it's single-minded and it brings in different factors. So the rescuer is relational, they have their allegiance, and they take charge. It amplifies that 2-8 line. The 2-6 line, 2-6 are both helpers, and the 8 and to already have a line of connection, so it amplifies it. So again, look for what's amplified and what can be crossed out. So a hero is a really good term, and a lot of times they just want to do something heroic, like be a paramedic, or they want to, but they're more on the healing end than the protecting in terms of like going into the armed forces. If we were to compare 268 and 368, that'll be, you'll have a lot more defenders, which 368s are, whereas the 268 is really trying to rescue people. Now the 269, this is the Good Samaritan. This is the triple people focused. It's triple passive, and all three are the helper types, one from each center. So you're gonna get someone that is really, truly the big-hearted Good Samaritan. And 9s with this tri-type and 6s with this tri-types will always think they're a 2 at first. And it makes sense because they're naturally focused on helping people. The 278 is the free spirit. Why is that? Well, they want to do things and they want to go with the flow like the 7. They want their way like 8 wants. Actually, all human beings want their way, by the way. This tri-type all has access, easy access to the skills of manipulating others so that you're not offending others by getting circumstances your way, or they're going to get away with it a lot better than a 258, for example, which would be too moody. Actually, when you learn more about the 258, they're a little moody because they're swinging between 2, towards, 5, away, against, 8. Whereas in this case, the 278 is like, okay, I'm upbeat, I'm positive, 2 up characters. Is it starting to make sense how the formula works with this need for to be a libertine? Now, if you don't understand 2 accurately, you won't see this as clearly, but the 2 wants freedom and pushes for freedom and needs control so they can be free. And this is that libertine, militant aspect of 2, but with that soft touch. So this tri-type is relational. They focus on enjoyment. So people enjoy the ride, even if they're going to have to do something they don't want to do. And they're protected. So then people are willing to indulge them. They really want to be indulged. The 279 is the triple upbeat, okayness. These are the 3 types that are identified with easy relating. They see themselves as easy. They want other people to be easy. But where they struggle is they make too many things okay that just aren't okay. And they cause conflict without realizing it, by not deciding, by not landing on a decision. I have just a quick story. A family that I was teaching the Enneagram to, an extended family, and the mom was this tri-type, and she said, you know, I was so lucky. My kids just never were ill. I don't know. And her kids, one was a 6 and the other was he a 5 or a 1? Oh, he was that tri-type. He had 1 and 5 in the tri-type. But they go, Mom, no, we went to Disneyland with a fever. One said I had a fever of 103, something high enough. But she just said, it'll be okay. You know, you'll be, you know, why would you want to be at home sick when you could be out at Disneyland sick? Because the trip. But the kid didn't think so, because the kid just wanted to be in bed, not going on ride after ride after ride. So it's how we envision things too. And I could give you the strength and weakness of each one of these, but right now I'm just trying to get that focus out there so we can go into other versions of this in the future. So this is the lemons into lemonade person, and why they're the peacemaker, because they want this happiness and joy. Whereas now, when we move to the 358, we've introduced 8. It's kind of a turning point where now we've got a real solution master, not just a problem solver. The 358 has in common that they can cancel out emotions in their decision making. Now, what's the very thing they're going to ultimately have to learn? To add emotions in. But by nature, they're strategic and impersonal, not unlike the 135. Even though they only share the 3, there's still something that happens in a way of canceling out emotional relating as valuable to decision making. So they have to learn emotional intelligence. It's really hard for them, but once they see the value of it, they begin to really add it in. So they are major solution masters. If you're not limited by how you feel or how others feel, yeah, you can make all kinds of decisions you wouldn't make otherwise. 359, ooh, this is the disguised person of the Enneagram. The person that's most hidden, because the 3 types are hiding the true self and camouflaging who they are for safety and security. So it's like the 3 is focused on having that image, which is not showing their ugliness, and we all have ugliness. And the 5 is like not wanting to reveal things about themselves to be safe. And the 9, who's going along to get along, is not showing their anger. So you have the most discreet, in a way, personality type. This, I call this kind of the day of the jackal archetype, because if they choose to, they could blend in anywhere and be like wherever they need to be. And then they can come out and show you who they are. They still want to be successful, the 3's in there. But what you have is a really unique person that thinks deeply, which is why they got the name thinker. And remember, some of these are so close, but you've got this in-depth analysis with the 9 seeing all points of view, with the 3 wanting to be the best. So you've got a wonderful way to exhibit or show what you want to show, and to more readily protect what is more tender and sensitive. The 368, this is the justice fighter. I don't care whether you're a 3, 6, or an 8, you think you're an 8, and I get why. They are more 8 than the 8, and everything about this combination creates everything 8-ness that has been written about 8 if you don't look at the core fear. If you're looking at behaviors, this 6 would never think they're 6. It's only when the interventions for 8 don't work that they're open to considering that they're the counterphobic 6 with this tri-type. And they're triple confronters, because the 6 automatically becomes counterphobic when 8 is in the tri-type. When 6 and 8 come together, that 6 will always be counterphobic. And the counterphobic 6 denies their fear. They go to the reaction, that immediate reaction first. It can happen with 6 and 1, but intermittent with 6 and 1. But it is constant with the 3, 6, 8. So these are the challengers on the Enneagram. These are the confronters. Because not all 8s want to go around confronting. However, if you challenge an 8, they won't back down and they won't back off. But they're not seeking it. This tri-type, they love debate. They love having a chance to make their arguments, so to speak. You can look at it, they've got the precision of the 3, they've got that duty counterphobia of the 6, and then they've got the take charge of the 8. 3, 6, 9. Okay, primary triad as I was speaking about. Triple adapters. I call them the shapeshifters of the Enneagram because they need to be the good guy, the every guy, the boy next door, girl next door, the good employee. Even if secretly they might do things that are less than that, they need their image to be that because 3 is in there. And remember, it's the primary tri-type, so they don't have other elements coming in and modifying and expanding their repertoire, so to speak. So what they share in common is this need to get along with others because it amplifies needing others. One way or another, all 3 of these need others. The 3 needs the affirmation from others. The 6 needs the security of reassurance from others. And the 9 does not want to be separate from others. So they try to mediate to the best of their ability, even if it's just not saying anything when they really feel maybe an ugly feeling. They won't, or they'd have to be pretty upset. And they get upset, so they do at times say things, but they'll take the middle road too much, actually. They have to learn to, especially if they lead with 9, to claim their position, even if it means someone will be mad at them. But the 6 doesn't want anybody mad at them. 9 doesn't want it. And 3s don't want it because they want the good feelings that come from the applause, the validation. 3, 7, 8. One of the early triads, so you probably know a lot more about it. This is the mover, shaker, candlestick maker, and they're also like empire builders, especially if they lead with 8. In fact, I will say them interchangeably, just as rescuer and hero are so interchangeable. Well, mover, shaker, and empire builder is a key feature of this combination. It's triple assertive can-do. It's not the most assertive type, by the way. 3, 6, 8 is more assertive than the 3, 7, 8. The counterphobic 6 is more impulse-driven, whereas with the 3, 7, 8, yes, the 7 is aggressive, but there's a smooth touch to it because the 7's in there. So they're really second in aggression to the 3, 6, 8. They own their own authority more, and they can schmooze people better than a 3, 6, 8. But the 3, 6, 8 is like, boy, they're like the machine of rat-a-tat-tat-tat and able to do whatever they've trained to do, right? And so they're going to fight for something, where the 3, 7, 8 doesn't want to fight about everything. They don't want to, unless they're a social instinct, they're not as cause driven as the 3, 6, 8. Where'd I leave off? Okay, 3, 7, 9, like 2, 7, 9. It's a rainbow person, but it's the most positive tri-type. People think 2, 7, 9 is the most positive. No, they're both positive, but the 2, 7, 9 is more relational. The 3, 7, 9 has 3, and 3 must be positive to make their defense strategy work. So the 379 is like they get along with people. That's why they're called the ambassador, and they're the sharp edges of the 3 are kind of shaved off a little bit because that 9 and 7, but they're very ambitious. They don't want to look like they're as ambitious as they are. And that's a key feature where 279, they're more peace oriented than success driven, to overgeneralize. And you get that triple positive and happy goodwill, but you've got the spin doctor part, the 3 in there. So they're the best at spinning positive scenarios, creating lemonade that's sweetened, not just like lemons and water so you can drink it. There's got a lot of sweetness to it because they know how to read people. They're very good at read people and spinning things in a way that even really negative things kind of seem like, oh, that was a good learning experience. Oh, okay. Yeah, you killed your best friend, but you learned that, yeah, that you're miserable for having done that. I mean, they can take anything. And we need people like that as well to position things in a way that more people will find agreement. And that's what they do best. The 458, very interesting character. The scholar, now they got the scholar over the thinker, but again, just struggling with differentiating is a whole nother thing. But the 458 is triple independent in their thinking. Why is that? Well, the 4 has their own idea about things and follow their intuition. The 5, for sure, they study deeply whatever it is they want to know before they even speak about it. And the 8 just was born that way. So you put the 3 together and you have someone that is really strong in their opinions. They also like to debate and argue philosophical ideas. In fact, they kind of wanted the philosopher for themselves because many of them have studied philosophy. But if you can think of the philosopher being the person who's trying to have all philosophies and find a neutral place, it makes more sense. Whereas the scholar has studied a lot of different things and are very confident in their opinions. So if it's an 8, it's an intellectual 8. All right, 459, this is the contemplative. This is the triple withdrawn. There is arrogance, though, because the 4 has an arrogant streak, the 5 has an arrogant streak, and the 4 has an arrogant streak. So if you're not arrogant, you're not this tritype. And the way it'll show up is that this tritype is often shy or reserved. And what they will feel without realizing it is that others should make them feel comfortable. And I once, many years ago, was working with this tritype. I said, out of curiosity, who should make you feel comfortable? And they said, well, the people that are comfortable talking and the people that are comfortable meeting others and those that are at ease. I said, well, then basically what you're saying is you want the 8s to make you feel comfortable. And she said, well, no. All other types are comfortable. And that's why they can talk so easily. I said, no, the person who talks too much is just as uncomfortable as you are. And they're trying to alleviate their distress by talking to you, engaging you, meeting you. But they would much prefer you come up to them as well. They just can't wait like you can. And once this tritype finds this arrogance, they shift so dramatically and can begin to move out because they've learned the most critical thing for themselves, and that is other people have anxiety too, but they're doing something different with us. You know, the 6 is getting chatty. You know, the 7's talking about anything and everything just to be at ease. The 9 is like, well, 9s would be, they'd have to be a social 9 to come up and be welcoming. The other 9s, well, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, because their own defense strategies in the way. So it's a real wonderful thing to see, is that they study deeply, that's the contemplative, but they have an incomplete assessment of themselves because they're projecting attributes onto others that they feel they don't have, but they have things that those others don't. And that is the power to wait. But then they're very hurt if people don't make them feel at ease. And then they don't need to feel hurt anymore. And then they don't get kind of prickly once they understand, like, oh, okay, that 6 is really talking. You know, first I liked it that 6 talked to me. Now that 6 is talking too much. It's usually because the 6 feels anxiety if someone isn't responding. And this Tritype is not that likely to do a whole lot of responding in rapid fire. So these are predictable ways that we will complement each other and conflict. But this is something not many people really understand about this Tritype. They think, oh, I'm shy, so I'm a 459. Doesn't really work like that. There are several types that are shy. 259, the shyest, and looks shy, by the way. And when the 259 shakes your hand, you just like, you don't really, they don't make that engagement, especially if they lead with 5. But they want to help, so it's confusing. The, who'd I leave off with then? The truth teller. Here's the triple reactive that many of us know about, but what it is, it's kind of, they're visceral. They are the type in each center that's meant to be immediate, without hesitation. So they are triple reactive. They can't help it. They were drawn that way, but they've got the depth and the ability to give meaning to suffering or anything, but they've got the 8 that wants to call off the truth. The 4 wants to call off the truth too. And the 6 wants the truth out there. So you have 3 types coming together that are seeking security through the truth, one from each center. So they're always in trouble for saying something too quickly because they do not have a type that helps them hesitate at all. Because all types are either moving towards, away, or against. And if you're moving towards, you're hesitating. If you're moving against, you are reacting quickly. And if you're moving away, you're reacting quickly. If there's no compliant type in a traditional sense, even though 6 is in here, the 6 is naturally the most complicated type on the Enneagram. That's why they think they're 4s all the time. Because when they're emotional, they are the most emotionally complex because their emotions are oscillating as they think their thoughts. Okay, so the 964, the seeker, triple doubting, the one I talked about at the beginning, because they just naturally will doubt. Because the 6 doubts, they don't necessarily trust themselves for sure, and they for sure don't trust you till you pass the tests. And then they can have blind trust. But going back to just the issue of trust, the 6 struggles with that the most. The 4 has self-doubt. And the 9, when you learn more about the Enneagram and understand the dichotomies, the 9 has the believer-doubter dichotomy. So they believe things whole and have the hope, like their connection to 3. But then when there's one little thing off, the 9 throws the baby out with the bathwater. And in a way, that's their move to 6. So the 9 is like believing, doubting. So when you have a 4, 6, 9, you have the type that is the most doubting, and more so than other tritypes that you might think of that would be the most doubting. But when you understand why, it makes more sense. And if they find their arrogance, they find their strength, believe it or not, because they do have the 4 in there. Where'd I leave off? Oh, why is it called the seeker? That's because if you're always doubting, you continue seeking. You need more information. You need to understand something better. And what they will share is that it's so frustrating to them. They go off in search of key information only to find another question. Like they might have one element of their search that's answered, but that raises new questions. So again, these tritypes I see as biological imperatives. We need someone that's going to stay in the seeking mode. Now, the seeking element was assigned to type 9. You know, if we're going to narrow it down to the 9 types only. But with this tritype, it's really intense, the degree of the seeking and the disappointment when they don't find. And if they know that that's part of what they're meant to do, they relax phenomenally. It's another, oh, I just want to tell you about each one of these tritypes, but it'll be in the class, as to what you can discover or how you can help people once you know their tritype, like the linchpin that opens up those narrow views that all types and tritypes have. But when you look at it through the lens of tritype, you're given that little domino piece or that linchpin to really be able to shift an understanding in a far greater way than just knowing their Enneagram type. You just don't have the same level of data. The Enneagram type still has a dominant lead type, no question, but it's like if you don't know all these elements, you don't have as many tools to help them understand themselves and for you to understand them and yourself if you're this tritype. Okay, the 874 I've talked a lot about, the messenger, you know, like as I said, the 4s wanted to be the capitalist, and the 8s liked maverick. That's what we felt the most comfortable with. But this is the triple creative, and this is the most original person. And now what makes it the messenger? That's because you have the 3 creative types coming together that feel compelled to follow what they see and share with others what others don't see. And what is key here is that because 8 is one of these creative types, it's the 3 types, by the way, that wrote creative as one of their adjectives, their 5 adjectives. And the reason for that is the 8 is the kind of the creative problem solver, the solution master, even though that was given to another tritype of 8. The messenger is the person that sees the new, the innovative, and then generally sees patterns the way creative people do, and is willing to have people say, no, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. No, that's not what this is or that is, but maybe what the person hasn't seen yet. The 478 has seen the interconnections because they're using the intuition of 4. They're using the kind of the jack of all trades element of the 7 and the can do element of 8. So they won't be deterred. There could be 100 people for 100 years saying, I don't think so. And then when more information comes out, people will say, oh, yeah, I see that, like when I did that very first study with my first 400 people, to have so few 3s respond and to have 7 of them send the same exact picture from a cigarette ad, so it was something available in a lot of places, but nonetheless, they sent it. They didn't know each other. No other Enneagram type sent that picture. Lead type 3. So when I first did that research and went back and said, hey, send me pictures, words, and phrases, and they did, it made it easier to teach the intangibles of the Enneagram, to help visual people in particular kind of get the differences. Last but not least is the 974, which was originally called the healer, by the way, or 479 Tritype. And what would happen is that people would say, well, I'm not a healer. You know, I don't think that's a good name for my tri-type. And then the other type in the tri-type, like the 4, would say, well, what do you do for a living? And the person would say, I'm a nurse. And the 4 would say, well, wouldn't you call that a healer of sorts? Or like the doctor that sees herself or himself as a technical, because they had to learn a lot of technical things to be in the profession, would say, yeah, I don't relate to healer too. It's really noteworthy. And this is where MBTI comes in and other factors that are so critical. But what ultimately they would agree to, and this was coming back, I think I had finally enough people where I could even look at the names in about 2006. So it was a lot of years after the fact. It was hard getting those names, as I mentioned earlier. But with the gentle spirit, they all related to the fact that they were positive, like the 9 and 7. This 9 needs to go along to get along. You can't make waves when you're 9, or you perceive that you can't. You may be making them and you don't know it. By no decision is a decision. But until you become aware of the Enneagram and this, what's motivating you, you don't know it. So they identify with their gentleness, but their triple imagination, it's like they're a type of creator. They're very much like the 478 without the, I don't care what anybody says. I'll put it out there. Crucify me if you must, but I'm going to put it out there and continue to put it out there no matter what. So the 9 doesn't want to do that, doesn't want the flack, but they are just as creative as the 478. They just don't have the, well, not, okay, I'll put a little step down from creative because they aren't the most creative type in their center, the 8 is. But they do see creative ways to try and get people to get along because they see all points of view. And it's a very magical tri-type as well. Both 478 and 479 are, but they've got the intuition and they've got the gentleness of 9. And one way that they struggle is that the 9 and 7 are positive, but the 4 is naturally going to focus on what's missing, which can be perceived as negative. So what they struggle with most is that they conceal their negativity because they are afraid they will be rejected for it. So if you are this tri-type, you know what I'm talking about, that you really wish you could whine and complain more when things are missing, but people are so used to you being positive and upbeat like the 7 and easygoing like the 9 that it can come across as jolting. So in service of safety and security, you end up going with the only doing that privately or with the select few. Did I get through all of them? I did. I have time for 2 questions.
What I could do, Katherine, is I could using VLC, I could record that as a section and upload it as a separate video. I'd say Katherine Fauvre going through all the 27 archetypes.
Oh,
smart.
right? Very smart. Define it as the triple focus.
Right, okay.
Of all 27. And that's how it would be different from other things that we're going to do over the years, right?
Yeah.
If we continue our relationship.
Hopefully.
When you're in with an 8, you're in. That is one thing that is true. But now we can go into,
Right. Well,
next time we meet up, we can go through different people's tritypes. But is there anything, I just need to, hold on, let me send a link.
okay.
And then at least that will be done for my client at 4. Where am I in time and space? Okay. Oh, no, that's what I need.
Right, so yes, folks, Carol has to be gone within about 13 minutes.
Yeah,
NT superpower is doing the time mathematics.
Yes. I mean, we're all actually coming from ours, aren't we? The fact that I'm even pushing that envelope is a great example of 8. Because I do want to be able to answer a question. I hate just the rote information. I really like to unpack things. We could have done this over 27 weeks, actually.
I think Katherine might have an interesting question because he's into NLP and he's been doing some coaching work. Got a question, Katherine?
Hold on 1 second. Sorry,
Okay.
guys. I'm not good at splitting my attention. I'm having a little bit of a problem here. There we go. Now it's working. I guess I haven't tried to do it at the same time before. At least it's on a different medium, so I can send the invitation. Yes. And then I can give you my undivided attention.
Well, it was nice to see Jonathan's back scratcher again in the hangout.
There we go. I'm back.
Okay, anyone want to talk?
Right, so Katherine, you can, if you've got a question for Katherine.
Not particularly. I just want to thank you, Katherine. Nice meeting you.
I didn't really get
to
meet you. What tritype do you identify with?
I identify with 514. I did your test, I think back in November when you were doing the promotion.
You know what?
And gave me 541.
Can you show me your face? I can't move where the people are at the bottom. And I'm really only seeing your eyes. Can you just, now I can see you. Okay. All right. Now go ahead. Say what you were saying. You took the test. Which test, with Enneagram Explorations that I did, or the new one that I'm in the process of creating?
I think the one that gave me the tritype.
The old one.
The 6,000.
Yeah, they both do. So you must mean.
Okay, I need to look at the.
There's a new test. There's a new
if
test.
If you did it in November, well, I did have a beta. So you probably did Enneagram Explorations. So yes, I'm now.
Yes, Enneagram Explorations.
Yeah.
I just posted the link to the test in the chat. The new test.
The potential wing and potential tritype, and then instinctual stacking. So I'm sorry that my question is going to be related to my tritype. So I don't know if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the question that I have is just the difference between 541 and 514. Is there a way to identify which one comes first?
If you were to give yourself a wing, do you think it's 4, or can you see the scientific elements of what the 5 with the 6 wing likes, and the people focus of the 5 with the 6, needing to be the shaman in, of the wise man in your world, whereas 5-4 wants more. They're more kind of iconoclastic in one way, that they are seeing the intuitive element, the
This Catherine's video's doing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Strange.
Oh yeah. Let me make sure.
So basically, feeling
It's on mute.
so basically, feeling 516 or 514.
I identify more with 516, even though I think I have a lot of 4 in terms of the obsession with uniqueness and yeah, that would be the main thing. But I have a lot of fears that I've been realizing that I have in terms of I'm an INTJ in the Myers-Briggs system and identify with IOI in the socionics. And my stacking is SPSO, so I do have the SO bit. I don't know if that's relating to the wing 6.
1, 2, 3.
Oh my gosh.
So she just emailed me.
Sorry, both are happening. I'm not quite sure how
I
to
think
do
this
it.
is another hangout. Are you another interaction you're involved with,
I
Catherine?
apologize with the door knocking and the. I guess I shouldn't have started the Zoom. I didn't. Usually, I
Yes,
don't.
we're here. Hopefully, the well polite people. Who
Even though it
speak
is,
language.
people are testing, especially if they're 6, they're gonna be on early, and they're not gonna be like me zooming in.
Okay.
But if we have like a couple minutes of a response, the thing to consider is that the 1 and 5 are lookalikes in that they're both detail oriented. That's what they share in common. And
So she's busy. Yeah, a lot of people are talking, but you need to start video.
It's okay if you need to go.
it's not going to work because
Just start video.
they don't realize even though it says busy.
She'll come online.
Okay. We'll set up another time. I
Great.
apologize.
So I'm going to turn off the video.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So I'm already connected to
Bye.
What do I have to do?
Catherine, is it okay if I stop the broadcast now?
Well, she's gone anyway, so
Right,
yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'll stop the broadcast, folks, and we'll have a private chat.